Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome to Developer Waypoints. Nic, how you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing good, Peter. Everything's good over here, man. Getting excited to talk about geocoding today.
Yeah, me too. If this is your first time here, we'll just go ahead and do some introductions. I'm Peter Malahan. I'm a senior UX designer at here, and to my left.
I'm Nic Raboy, and I'm a lead developer evangelist at here.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're excited to have you back. Episode 3. I'll just go ahead and explain Waypoints. Waypoints is a live coding series that we progressively build something over a season of episodes. And right now we're near the end actually of season 1, which is JavaScript. Before we get too far, I'll remind everybody that if you want to code along with us with this episode, you need to make sure to go to developer.here.com and sign up and make an account there. It's free. You don't need a credit card or anything. And I'll even make sure that there's a link in chat that you can follow. But you'll have to have an account to continue today with us. If not, it's okay. You can just hang out and watch and chat and ask questions and code later. But yeah, so yes. So next on the docket, I just had too many things that I wrote down to get to before we start. If you're in chat and you're here and you're watching, just make sure you're asking questions. Make sure you're giving suggestions, talking to each other. Anything on your mind, just blurt it out, and we'll talk about it. And we also have 2 mods in chat. I don't remember what their name. It's Palermo and Jason are mods in chat. They have little sword icons next to their names. And if it's a question that we can't get to or we can't figure it out on the spot, they'll be able to try to help you out with that.
Or we'll cover it in the next episode.
Or in the next episode. We'll write it down. We've done that on the last episode.
Yeah.
There's also now, we've got some bot commands. I can do, let's see here. Throw in a little command. It's Nightbot. He's a nice little guy. And if you click on his little link, it'll take you to a couple options that you can have to send commands to get links and stuff like that. Hey Ashutosh, how's it going? What else? Oh, did we have a shameless plug for today before we get started, Nic? Do you know?
I don't know. We could open it up to the chat to see if anyone's working on anything currently with here, and just shout it out.
Do you have anything that you're going to shout out, Nic?
Do I have anything? Actually, I do have something. So next week there's going to be another stream happening on this Twitch channel. So it's not going to be part of Developer Waypoints. It's going to be part of AWS Connections. So it's a different type of topic, but it'll still be very technical.
We can talk about that a little bit at the end of the stream. Go into a little more detail. I don't think it's next week though, Nic.
Oh, do I have my dates wrong?
I think you have your dates wrong. I think it's in like 3 weeks.
Regardless, we will be adding it to the calendar, right, Peter?
It is on the calendar. I can send links to that once we get near the end. I can collect those together and send them out, and we can explain a little bit more about what that is. But it's a shameless plug. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're if you're interested with our Twitch channel, we're kicking off a few more seasons of things. We're already planning season 2 of Waypoints. We've got another series planned, and even a few one-off streams. So yeah, keep a lookout and make sure you're following our account so you can see everything that we're doing. Anyway, Palermo says, Nic, you're scaring me. Yeah, Palermo's also on that live stream. It's not next week.
It's not next week.
No,
all right,
it's not.
Then I understand why he would be scared.
Yeah. All right, Nic. So we're in the season 1 of JavaScript. What did we do the last 2 episodes since we're on episode 3?
Yeah. So the first episode that we saw, we explored how to get a here map on the screen, how to interact with it by adding various map objects, markers, polylines, things like that. And then the second episode was more or less the same thing, but we didn't use the default here renderer for our map. We actually consumed the here map tiles with Leaflet.js, which is a popular open source tool. And then we saw how to essentially do the same thing, so like display markers, interact with the map, but this time using Leaflet.js. So that's kind of the rehash of before.
Yeah, episode 2 is interesting because it was kind of taking our own stuff and kind of using an open source renderer, right? To
Let me actually just show both of them. Let me copy my credentials here. I actually do have both projects open on my screen. So I'll go to index.html. I'll just paste my codes in, and we'll just do a quick little refresher because it will be very relevant for this particular episode. So this is episode 1. I pulled this from our GitHub repository. I do a push after every episode. So you'll be able to obtain any code that we use. But if I go here and I choose, I think I could open this from Visual Studio Code. Open in Finder maybe? That'll work. So this is what we saw in episode 1. This is what we accomplished. This is using the here renderer. And then if I went over and I copied my tokens again and went into episode number 2. So it also has an index file. And if I paste this in on line 15, I've got another app token here. Save that, open it with Finder again. You can see it looks essentially the same. I mean, there's some slight differences. That's because we're using Leaflet as our renderer this time instead of here. And just to note that this particular episode, the 3rd episode, is going to go back to reflect on episode number 1. So we won't be using Leaflet in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So what are we doing today, Nick? What's our plan?
So this time, in the previous episodes, we used a lot of latitude and longitude coordinates. And like I expressed previously, I don't think any human is going to be able to remember a bunch of latitude and longitude coordinates. At least I can't. I was just guessing on the ones that we used. So I said many times before that we're going to see how to get around this in a future episode. That's this episode.
So we're gonna today.
That day is today. Winter has come, right? So we're actually going to be using addresses and converting them into latitude and longitude coordinates. So we're going to geocode them.
So we don't have to memorize lat and long for everything that we want to reference.
Yeah, because we've all been probably conditioned to use addresses, right, Peter?
Oh yeah. So Bierzo app says, "Hey guys, thanks for keeping up the good work. Looking forward to the other show." Nick, there you go.
Awesome.
You're already getting some followers for your other show. And Palermo is clarifying it's April 17th for AWS connections.
Got it.
Using Lex Chatbot with here APIs.
All right, perfect.
That's spoilers for the next season.
Spoilers, all right.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's just one part of what we're going to accomplish in this particular example.
Perfect. And we, I have the GitHub link in chat. So if you want to download, what are you going to have episode 1 as a starting point?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy episode 1's directory and call it episode number 3. So I can actually do that now. I'm going to do that in my terminal. So I'm going to say copy. I'm going to say episode 1, and that's now going to become episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, 3. Come on.
3 just appeared magically.
Perfect.
Let me remove these tokens though real quick because we will be doing a push at the end of this episode, and I don't want these tokens to end up on GitHub. I want you to be able to use your own tokens. So let's just revert a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to spend all of our time in this episode 3 project now. I'm even going to close the navigator so we don't get confused. But it is exactly a copy of episode number 1 as of right now.
Yep.
Sound good, Peter?
That sounds great.
All right, and actually let me open it so that way it's in our web browser. So this is what we're going to be using going forward.
Looks familiar.
So the first goal that we want to accomplish here is, well, all of these points that consist of these markers in this polygon are hard-coded latitude and longitude values. So we're going to make them more dynamic first. So we can do that using the Geocoder API, and it is in our documentation. So we have a Geocoder as well as reverse Geocoder. I'm going to be demonstrating both of these starting with the Geocoder. But essentially, we provided a search string. In this case, it could be an address of any vagueness. So it could be very complex, like a full address, or a vague address. And we're going to play around with it and see what we end up with. And that'll convert things into point coordinates for us.
Perfect.
So let me go ahead and start by let's just comment everything out as far as our markers. We're gonna copy them in as we progress, but we don't want them to be the focus as of now. So I'm just gonna copy the bottom half. All I really have now is the initialization of our here platform and displaying a map on the screen. So the first thing that we can do is, well, let's go ahead and try to use that geocoder. Before we can do that, we have to initialize the service. So I can say constant, I can say Geocoder Service, and set that equal to platform dot get geocoding service. And if I ever make a typo, Peter, I'm counting on you to point it out.
I know the least about Geocoder, so
that's fine.
So here's a question: Are you getting that this reference from one of the calls that you're already making up above?
Yeah, from I believe it's coming from this script. Okay. But it's not. When you start using these JavaScript modules, it doesn't download the Geocoder service. It downloads an API command set to make requests against the here servers.
Okay.
Because this is data that's constantly evolving and getting better. So we always want to make sure we're getting the latest and greatest data, right?
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. So I have the Geocoder service. So to use it, we can start it off like this. So we can say Geocoder service .geocode. And this, and I'm gonna, based on feedback from the last episode, I'm gonna try to not to make my lines as long. So I'm gonna break it up. But the first object is actually going to be an options or a configuration object. So it's gonna contain our search text. And we're gonna hard code it for now. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead.
That's just what you'd be passing in as what you're looking for.
Yeah, this would be my query. And there's other parameters. You could always view the documentation for that. But in the most basic aspect, we provided a query. So in this case, I'm gonna hard code it. And before I do that, let me go back to my browser here. Right now, I am centered around Los Banos, so I'm just gonna copy. I'm just gonna type that in. So that way we don't have to scroll around on the map. But I'm gonna say Los Banos, and that's in California. The next parameter for this geocode function is going to be a success callback. So I'm going to say success. And we're just going to print it out to the logs for now. So I'm going to say console.log, and I'm going to say success. And this is going to evolve as we go through. And like I mentioned in previous episodes, things are getting more complicated than what we saw in the first two episodes. So, but it won't be too difficult. We're also going to have an error callback here. And I'm just going to say console.error if an error does occur. And we're going to leave it at that.
So you know what's going on if something breaks.
Yeah, exactly. So if I go to my web browser here and I refresh, and you can see that it took everything away as far as the objects. But I'm going to look at my inspector. Let's see if I can actually drop that somewhere else. So that way it's not floating there. See if I can drop it below. I'm going to zoom in on it. And I'm going to look at the console logs. So we received an object back. It didn't error out on us.
I was going to say, there's nothing there. Okay.
No, if it was an error, it would have been in red.
Okay.
So it didn't cause an error. So this object was a success. It returned a response. It has a lot of meta information in this response, but what's valuable to us is inside the view. So it returned one result based on that query. One result. Let me navigate into it. Is this large enough? Should I zoom in, Peter?
I think zoom a little bit more.
How about that?
Maybe like one more point.
One more. All right.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So it returned location
chat, let us know.
information.
Let us know if you can't read that.
Yeah, definitely. So I typed in Los Banos, and I only typed in California, but it provided other information as well. It provided me the country. It provided me the county. It might have provided other stuff as well. It provided a potential postal code. And remember, all I did was type in this very vague piece of information.
Wow. So what if, do you have to clarify that in what state it is? Like what if it returns, what if there's multiple cities that have the same name?
Yeah, so let's play around with this before we actually modify things. So I'll just go ahead and say what this and see if anything anywhere, maybe there's a bunch that show up in Mexico or similar in our result set. So let's take a look. So I refresh it. I look at the response. We look at the results. There's 3 results that came back this time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it's now my query is now more vague, right? So this first one, if I look at the location, I guess there's a Los Banos in the Philippines.
Wow.
Or let's look at this one. California in the United States, and then Argentina.
Wow.
So quite a few results came back, and the more specific your query is, the fewer results are going to come back, right? So let's make some changes. I'm going to switch this back to California here. Maybe we want to display one of these map markers, right? Because we had hard-coded them before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say constant marker 1 equals new h.map event, not map events, map.marker. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use that result. So if I recall, and I'm not going to check for any errors, what I can do is, let's do the following. Let's say constant, let's say location equals success.response.view. And again, I'm going to assume that there were no errors for this. You could probably definitely add some error checking to see if results were actually returned here. But I'm just going to assume that we got one result back.
So your success is just the response from that call, that search that you're making.
Yeah,
okay.
And success doesn't necessarily mean that it found
exactly what you're looking for. It's just
results.
Here's the results.
Yeah. An error would be like maybe there's something wrong with the request itself.
Okay.
So we're going to look at the first result where we're not going to worry if multiple results come back. And then we have location, and then I believe it was display position. And we could validate that in a minute. Let's actually log that out. Location. And for the marker, let's go ahead and say lat is going to be location.latitude. And I'm doing it again. So let's break this up. Catch that stuff on me, Peter.
That's good. It wasn't getting too long. You're still kind of in the middle of the screen.
Oh, it's going to get long.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah. All right, latitude and longitude. But that's just the marker. We haven't added it to the map yet. I could easily add it to the map by saying map.addObject, and we called it marker 1. So I save it, and this, in theory, should work.
Perfect.
So I refresh it, and now I've got a marker here in Los Banos. It printed out just the latitude and longitude because that's all I was interested in for this example.
Congrats.
Yeah,
it's like you've done this before.
Just a few times.
So we have a few comments. Lilinahan says looks great to me, commenting on the size of the console, which is good. Mathun TD says good stuff, guys. Keep it up.
Awesome.
Gadget Boy here says hi, first time Twitch user. Our stream's archived for viewing later. Yes, it brings up a good point. You'll be able to see on our Twitch page after this broadcast ends that you can watch it as a past broadcast. But you can also go to, let me see if I remember what it is. through our here YouTube channel, you can watch our recorded past episodes. So if you're missing something right now, you can go back and watch them. And I also made a playlist through our Twitch account. So if you want to stay on Twitch, you can. But there's links to both of those, episode 1 and episode 2, to catch up. And then once episode 3 is done, I'll download it and I'll put it up both on Twitch and on YouTube. So if you're late and you want to catch up later, you can. You can still stick around and chat if you want.
Definitely. Any other comments, Peter?
Jithing says, yes, these are. I'm not sure what that's referencing to.
All right.
They are recorded for later, I think.
Oh, all right. All right, perfect. So I'll go back to my code now. So now that we kind of have the basis, the foundation for the geocoder, now I kind of want to make it more dynamic, because as we saw, we had 3 markers here. We want it probably wouldn't be great to have to do this 3 more times, right? So what we can do is we can actually make a function for it. I'm actually going to say this. I'm going to call it Geocoder, and it's going to have a query that can be passed in by the user, and we'll leave it like that. And I'll show you what changed here. So if I wanted to, I can switch this now to the query variable that the user can pass in. So if I saved it, I can say Geocoder, because that's what we called the function, and I could provide it a query. This time, let's just go ahead and say Fresno, California. Save it, refresh it, and the marker moves. So it's a little more dynamic now, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna improve this even more, because I personally am not a fan of working with callbacks. So we're gonna turn this into a promise, and then we're gonna use some modern JavaScript to hopefully make our lives a little easier in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Can you make the map kind of center around that called point 2? Or is that,
yeah, that's actually what we're gonna try to do next.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't actually know that.
yeah. So no problem. Let's go ahead and copy this. So I'm going to actually move this up near the top. I'm going to paste it up above map, because we're going to call it within that map function, and it formatted it a little strange. So I'm going to fix my tabs here. I think one more will do it. So what we want to do is we want to change this center point, and there are functions as well if you want to center it after the fact. But I figure, well, we might as well just not use any latitude and longitudes as of now at all, and that includes the initialization of the map. So we're going to work at correcting this. So first of all, we're going to change this into a promise for JavaScript. So we can do that by using a library called Bluebird, or we can just wrap it ourselves, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to say return. I'm going to say new promise. I'm going to have a resolve and a reject. And let's just put that at the bottom here. So I wrapped it in a promise, and now instead of adding this code, leaving it in here, we're actually going to resolve with that. So I'm actually going to say resolve, and you'll see where I'm going with this in just a second.
So as somebody who's not a complete expert at JavaScript, how would you describe a promise? Simply.
Yeah, simply, I'm not an expert at JavaScript either. So it's just, so I guess JavaScript has evolved over the years. It started with callbacks, it moved into promises, and now it's moving into this new thing. It's just an effort to make it a little more easier for the developer. And in order to use this new thing, which is called async and await, you have to be using promises rather than callbacks.
Okay. So is that because is Geocoder work as like an asynchronous?
Sort of. So I mean, you have to make a request to the server. And as we know, servers can take X amount of time to respond.
Okay.
So rather than blocking our code and waiting for a response, we have to do it in parallel. And then that's where things can get a little confusing, because now how do you add markers to your map in parallel? How do you interact with your map in parallel? And things get a little weird. But it doesn't have to be difficult, and that's where I'm trying to go with this. Is to try to keep it from being difficult.
Okay.
So we're resolving that, and then in an error event, we're saying reject. So now we have this more as a promise. And because I want, before I even turn this into an async and await, we're just gonna see how this now works instead. So I had Geocoder like this previously. I'm just gonna say then result. And if I really wanted to, I can just say console.log result, or display a marker in there, or whatever I wanted to do, and it would still work like that. So it's just
Perfect.
changed slightly. Mm-hmm. But this is not really anything to do with here. It's just more in preparation to making our code more usable long term. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Perfect. All right. So now this is where we change things up. So in order to use async and await, we do have to have an asynchronous function defined. And that could be done as easy as wrapping the rest of our code in a function. So I'm going to wrap it in a start function. So I'm going to say constant. I'm going to say call this a start, and then we're just going to define it as async. And then there's going to be no parameters that we pass, but we're going to put now everything that comes going forward is going to go inside of that function. I'll show you, and then to actually run it, I'm going to say start. And before I make any changes at all, I'm just going to run it again. You'll see that nothing has changed. Something did change.
Oh.
All right, so let's figure it out.
All
right, so let's move this. Shouldn't be inside of it, so that should be above, because what's happening is Geo Coder Service is trying to be used, and it wasn't yet defined.
There you go.
So this should work back to normal. Yeah, we're back to normal.
Gotcha.
So
that was a quick find. That's impressive.
Luckily the log was very clear. Usually Good. I'm not that lucky.
Good.
So you wanted to center on Fresno, or did you want to center on somewhere else, Peter?
I like Fresno. I've never been there.
So let's go. I won't make any comments. So I'm going to say constant. I'm going to call this Fresno, and this is where I'm going to use await. An await expects a promise. So we already have Geocoder. We define Fresno, California. And we don't need to do then because the await is going to handle that for us. So let's clean this up. So we've got a Fresno variable. And all we have to do now is just say Fresno.latitude and Fresno.longitude. Because we don't have to work with nesting or anything.
Yeah.
The await kind of flattens things out for us. So if I refresh it, it's not going to have a marker. I removed the markers, but at least it'll center on this new portion of the map, or it should. There it is.
Wow.
So we're making progress.
Cool. Do you want to maybe go back to your code?
Yeah.
Scroll up and kind of show the nesting that you're.
The nesting that I was referring to?
That you've kind of built through this, just to kind of maybe explain what's being called and
yeah. At the most basic form, this right here, what I've highlighted, is what you would need to do to use the geocoder. Okay. It has a configuration, which is this search text, and it expects a query, and then it has a success and an error. In this case, all I've decided to do was I've decided to make it into a promise by resolving the success response or rejecting the error, okay. Which is promise terms. And then using the promise, I can use it in an asynchronous function.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Perfect. So then I'll add a marker now. So I'll add a marker on Fresno. Remember, everything we going forward is going to be inside of this asynchronous function. Start doesn't have to be called start, but it does need that async in there if I want to use await. Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to, I can now say we've already got Fresno. So let's go ahead and say constant, I'll call it Fresno marker equals new h.map.marker. And I'm going to say the lat is going to be Fresno.latitude, and then the longitude is going to be Fresno.longitude. That line too long, I keep forgetting to break it up.
That's okay. That's fine.
It's all good.
That's not
all right.
Our heads
All
aren't
right.
in the way yet, so.
Awesome. I'll scroll down then too. Then I could just say map.addObject. I can say Fresno marker. I can save it. Go back to my browser. It added a marker. So you'll notice that as of right now, we're not working with the latitude and longitudes hard coded at all now.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with what the geocoder has responded based on our plain text query, right?
Cool.
So I want to make some changes. So what I want to do is I want to reproduce what we had before,
Okay.
but without all of the hard coding before
So-
we proceed.
So real quick, we're
Yes.
at about 30 minutes left.
Sure.
What's our where are you at with your presentation here?
Yeah. So after the geocoder, I was going to do a brief thing on reverse geocoding, and then places. So the reverse geocoder would be fast, but the places has a little bit of depth to it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean we can go a little over. I'm totally fine with that, but I just want to make sure that we're not
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
thinking we've got about 30 minutes of content
all
left.
right. Awesome.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
So let's quickly reproduce what we had previously. Since I don't know many regions around Fresno, I'm going to just change this up. I'm going to call it Tracy, which is where I live. And then some more familiar territory for me. What I also want to do is I want to add some more places. So I'm going to say constant. I'm going to say maybe Stockton equals await geocoder Stockton, California. Say constant Modesto. I'm just doing a few of them, so that way we can create our triangle again. Just to show you that it's not particularly difficult to do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I have that. I have those two. Let's go ahead and create two more markers. This one's going to be Stockton. This one's going to be Modesto.
How are you doing that? Like ripple change on your?
Oh yeah, it's a feature of Visual Studio Code.
Wow, that's pretty
So that way I
sweet.
can change like terms. I'll change this to add objects. Remember, you can add multiple in array form.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, that doesn't do it. There we go. We'll do Stockton marker and Modesto marker. So if I go back into Chrome, I refresh. We've got three markers. We're just going to draw a triangle between them.
Wow.
Sound good?
So are you still centered on? You
No,
changed where you're centered. You're centered.
Yeah,
on,
right now I'm centered on Tracy. And I actually commented out the ability to move the map around. I could always add that back in, but since it's actually all in view, it's not too necessary.
Okay.
I actually commented it out right here. I could add it back in later. But what I want to do now is I want to add the line string stuff. So I just copied it and pasted it in. This is going to be Tracy marker. This is going to be Stockton marker. This is going to be Modesto marker. Let's go ahead and create a polygon out of this. So I'm going to copy the polygon code, paste that in as well, fix the weird formatting that it did. And I'm actually going to just remove the style information as well. So just the basics.
Just a basic polygon.
Yep. And I'm going to add it to the map. I save it, and it added it.
Wow.
And this is, remember, the polygon wasn't really based on any kind of, I guess it was based on the points of the markers, but we have now defined the markers positions as our geocoder.
Cool.
So I won't add anything else. We'll go to the next step. So the next step is going to be reverse geocoding. So we've converted the address to latitude and longitude coordinates, but there's often a scenario where you might need to convert latitude and longitude coordinates to an estimate of an address. Maybe you're collecting GPS data and you need to go convert it into address information later on.
Mm-hmm.
There could be other scenarios as well. So we could easily do that. I'm going to create another function for that.
Will that just be another query, or is that a different?
It's similar. It's similar. It's not quite the same because you're not querying for an address. you're providing actual latitude and longitude coordinates, right?
And then asking for an address.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if I wanted to, I'm going to call it reverse geocoder. This time around, what I'm expecting is it's actually in the documentation here real quick. What am I expecting? I'm expecting a proximity, a mode, and then a number of results to return. So let's check it out. Let's go back into the code. So I'm going to say chords. I'm going to say actually let's just say the user is going to provide us chords. We're not going to worry about them providing us anything else. So chords, we're going to specify that we're only going to do one result, and we're going to specify that it's going to be retrieving addresses. So we have chords. It's going to be the same kind of setup. We're going to say return new promise, resolve, reject, because this uses callbacks as well. It'll look kind of familiar, but we're going to say Geocoder Service. And this time around, it's going to be reverse geocode. I believe reverse geocode. Yeah, that's what the docs say. I zoomed in. So reverse geocode. In terms of what it expects, we have a proximity, and the proximity is going to be chords dot latitude separated by comma, and we're going to have chords dot longitude. We have a mode, which is retrieve addresses. So it's going to get addresses. There are other options, so you can retrieve areas or other things. It's all listed in the documentation, but we want an address for this example. And then max results, I think, is what it was called. Do you recall, Peter?
No, I don't remember.
Max results equals 1. So again, we're going to have a success and an error. I'll scroll down here.
If anybody in chat is a little lost right now, feel free to
interrupt
jump
me.
out and say anything.
So we have.
I know exactly what's going on, so I don't have any questions. Obviously.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna quiz you on that in just a minute. Well, I did say that it gets a little more complex, right?
It does.
As our videos progress, like the next video, which is going to be on routing, is going to explore. It's going to latch onto what we've been going over, and it's going to expand upon it, and get a little more into the weeds, right?
Deal.
All right, perfect. So this is going to be our reverse geocoder, and I won't show it on a map, but I'll show it in action. So if I wanted to, I can say constant location equals await, because this is a promise, and I'm going to say reverse geocode. Call it reverse geocode. I called it reverse geocoder. I'll just call it code. And I'll provide it latitude and longitude coordinates. So I'm going to say latitude. Let's use the good old-fashioned numbers that we were using prior, right? Do you remember the other coordinate I was using?
I don't know. It's like 40.1 or something like that.
No, man, it's right on the screen.
Is it? I was way off.
All right. So we have the location in theory. I'll just print it out. Console.log location. And in theory, this is going to give us some kind of address based on our use of the reverse geocode API that's part of the JavaScript SDK. So if I refresh my screen, it did, and that response is going to look very similar to what we've seen already. So in this case, if I scroll through it here, we got one result because that's how much we defined, and the location based on the latitude and longitude is Los Banos, which is what we saw previously, right?
Wow. Yep.
So there could be value to you in using a reverse geocoder, whatever you can think up. Mm-hmm. I personally use the standard geocoder a lot more.
Okay. Real quick, Jimmy Vogler tried to paste a link into chat, and Nightbot decided that it wasn't allowed. But it's a reference to, I think, through data science advertising, talking about giving an example of active retail advertising.
Does that use the reverse geocoding?
I'm gonna skim through it real quick. I haven't seen this before.
All right.
Let me see. But you can continue on, and I'll jump in, and then if Jimmy, if you have anything else to clarify, I'll be happy to relay it.
Yeah. So then I'll just talk about what I'm doing next, and we do have time. We have plenty of time for this, and I could always explore what we did if I went too fast. But the next step is we want to figure out places. So we can figure out locations based on addresses, but I want to be able to search for a particular place like Walmart or McDonald's or restaurants or anything like that, right? So I need to be able to do a query for that. So you can actually do that with the Places API that here offers. So that it's points of interest. But the setup is going to be, again, more or less this, very similar to what we saw with the Geocoder and reverse Geocoder. So we're going to use the same kind of concepts, and this is just right out of the documentation. So we're gonna be making use of this. But in order to make use of it, we do need to include another module for our JavaScript SDK. So what I'm going to do is instead of map events, it's actually places. So this is the module that we needed to add if we wanted to use places. So I'm going to add this other function now. Well, actually, before I add it, I'm going to initialize the service for that. So in terms of the service, what we have, let's go to the documentation. I'll just copy it. So I'm going to copy this right out of the documentation here. So what we're doing is we're getting the places from our platform, and we're defining our new search object. And this is how we're going to make requests for those places. So I'm going to use search inside of a function that I'm wrapping in a promise again. So I'm going to say constant. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and call it maybe places. The places, it might have a query. So a query, so maybe Starbucks or something similar. We have the coordinates, and then we have the radius. So when it comes to the coordinates and the radius, you don't want to just query for every possible place in the world. You want to narrow it down, because that's going to narrow down the payload of your request. So the response, it's going to be better for you long term, I think, for your application.
So can you just request based on viewport? Can you like radius just by miles around the center coordinates?
Yeah, so radius would be in meters rather than miles.
Yeah.
And then the coordinates, you probably could get the center point of the viewport. There probably is a pixel to geo kind of JavaScript function. I think I've seen it. So you could probably get that out of whatever's on the screen. But for our case, we're just going to provide it. We're not going to do anything too fancy. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So let's go ahead and wrap it again. So I'm going to say return new promise, resolve, reject. And we're going to do the following. So we're going to say, I ended up over there. Search, request, and we're going to provide a few things. So the first thing that we want to provide is the query, so Q. And this, again, is in the documentation here. So we're going to go back. So I'm going to say Q. That's going to be our query. We're going to say in, and we're going to provide the latitude, longitude, and radius. So we're going to say chords.latitude. This is separated by a comma. Chords.longitude. And then this is actually separated by a semicolon, r equals, and that's representing our radius. A little different. But we do have actually there is headers that we're not going to be using for this example. I've personally never done a search request with headers, but we're going to skip over that for now, and we're going to go straight into our success.
Okay.
Even in the example here, they skip over headers too, I think. Somewhere in here there's headers. Yeah. They skip over it.
What does a header define? Is that just
off the top of my head? I don't know.
empty?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Right? It's fine. for everything that I've used it for, I haven't needed to include it.
Okay.
But there could be a use, maybe some
Okay.
kind of validation header or authorization.
Okay. So back to Jimmy.
Yeah.
Maybe you can, Jimmy, you can maybe clarify what exactly you're referencing. But it looks like it's kind of a report on combining location geometry data with dynamic mobile user data. So.
Oh, was that the link?
Yeah. I can actually, since it got banned from. It got prevented by Nightbot from other users posting links. So the link is the data science and advertising. Biarzo app says, is there a way to return a unique ID when using the Places Geocoder API for more detecting duplicate data?
Like, maybe what are you referring to? Are you referring to so that way if you do a search for maybe restaurants, you don't want three McDonald's to come back, kind of thing? Or I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
A unique ID when using Places. So do you get a unique ID for each place maybe that's being
let's check.
Given back to you?
Let's check. So I'm gonna print out the success based on what we find. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
And we're gonna look through the log together. So if I want to do back in my start function, I'm gonna say constant. What place am I searching for, Peter?
I don't know. I'm looking for Starbucks. I don't know.
Starbucks. All right.
I'm not a big McDonald's fan, but if you want to look for McDonald's,
I don't know. It's fine. So the first one is going to be the query. We're going to say Starbucks. The next one is going to be coordinates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say that it's going to be using our Tracy coordinates. Remember, we have access to that because we've already geocoded that.
Yep.
So I'm just going to say Tracy, and the radius is in meters. So I'm just going to say I think we're going to need like 10,000 meters in order to get results. And I can print that out. I can say console.log. This is exactly what the response is going to give us, provided it doesn't fail. And remember, I'm not doing any error checking. But we haven't run into any errors yet. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to refresh. Finally, it does have an error, right?
You had to say something. You had to say something.
Where did I? Yeah, what am I looking at? Line 16. What's on line 16 up here? Probably nothing, right?
The start of your geocoder. Didn't you change the name to Geocode? Oh no, that was reverse geocode. Are you referencing geocoder instead of reverse geocoder in your?
No, I actually have a comma here instead of a semicolon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's hard to see. I fixed it though. So let's see. All right.
There you go.
So we still have the reverse geocode response. This is actually the places response. So in the results, we have items, and these are all of the items that were returned. So if I look at one, there is an ID. So let's see if this is noticeably different from the next ID.
Okay.
It does, right? What did it end with, the other one? Not B28, did it?
I don't think so.
Let's check again. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
So I mean, is that
one
to the person that asked that question? Is that kind of information valuable to you?
I'll keep an eye, and I'll
You'll
respond.
keep an eye.
Yeah,
All right.
Biarzo app. If that answers your question, we'll feel great. But if not, we can keep investigating.
Yeah.
Clarify.
So let's display these places on the map. It doesn't really help us in regards to showing them in the logs. Although notice that in the actual response for a place, we have various information. So we have the vicinity, which would be the address of that place. We also have the latitude and longitude, which is more valuable to us. But we also have other information that might come back in the Places API request. So like hours of operation, an icon,
cool.
what genre of place it might be. Just various information that might be valuable to you.
Nice. Biarzo says, thanks for interested in the weather API. There doesn't seem to be an ID.
In where? Oh, when using the weather API?
Yeah.
Got it. We could investigate that in another episode.
Sure.
Definitely.
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, make a note, please. So let's display that. So we've got Starbucks. We could probably make a modification here. We know that Starbucks, we have what? Results, and then items is what we're after. So that's all that's particularly valuable to us. So I'll say results.items. I'll refresh it and run it again. So now we only have the actual items that were responded rather than all of the meta information that came back with it. So with each of the items, we could probably do a loop. So we can say something like, well, first we can define our markers. Constant markers equals an array. So we're just going to create markers for each one of those Starbuckses. But I'm just going to loop through them. I'm going to say I equals 0, I less than Starbucks length. So the items in that array, I plus plus. And then we're just gonna add these items to the marker. So I'm gonna just say markers.push, and we're gonna say new h.map.marker, and break it up again so it's not so long. But we're gonna add the latitude and longitude. So we're going to say, in this case, the latitude and longitude in this case, it's actually an array. So we can't just say latitude and longitude for the position. We have to use array elements, which is not the end of the world. It's just a little different. So let's go ahead and say the lat is going to be Starbucks I dot position, and this is going to be the first element of that array is the latitude, and the second one is going to be the longitude.
That makes sense.
And I think so. We have all of our markers. What we can do is we can just say after the loop, we could say map dot add objects plural, and we can just say markers because now we have an array. So let's refresh, and now we have a bunch of Starbucks locations. And wow. I can't zoom around because I still commented it out. So let me put it back in? Fix that. Yeah, somewhere in here, right after the map. I saved it. Refresh it. Now I could move it around.
There you go.
But we have different locations now for a 10,000 meter radius from this center point.
And you got two right next to each other, like a
Starbucks. They're all the way across the street from each other, right? So I mean, we covered quite a bit. This is substantially more information than we saw in the previous episode, because we looked at three different things, right, Peter? Mm-hmm. We looked at the Geocoder, reverse Geocoder, and Places API with JavaScript.
And that's all just within the Geocoder call, pretty much, right?
No. So the reverse Geocoder and the Geocoder are part of the same module.
Okay.
Places is a totally different API that here offers. So it has different documentation. It can do more than what I've just demonstrated here. Like some powerful usage would be if you wanted to look for restaurants or things like that, rather than a particular item. Maybe you want to look for landmarks.
Mm-hmm. And you get all that extra data around hours and icons and stuff like that, right?
If it's available. I wouldn't say that that's going to be present in every result that you get, but if it's there, it'll be returned. But I mean, look at this. I don't think I have any more hard-coded latitude and longitudes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I do actually. I lied. I have this one, but this is for the.
No, that's what you're. That's the whole point of that.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this line. So that's fair game.
Okay.
But it makes life easier when you don't have to remember that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So how much more complex does it get when you offer a user to to input that type of data.
What type of data?
Like if you have somebody like click on a map and ask for a location.
So like if I were to click on this, like if I were to just click a point on the map,
Yeah.
I'd
Or
have
like
to
if you had a text box or something that you just wanted to search
yeah.
for.
Yeah, so I know I've used it before. There is functionality to convert pixels to geo coordinates with the Here JavaScript API. I don't know it off the top of my head. You have to use a JavaScript listener and things like that. But there's like gesture events that you can track.
Cool.
But if you were to add a text box, it would be really no different than what we have.
Nice.
And just to reiterate here, I mean, a lot of this was us kind of modernizing our code. The code involved in order to use each one of these API services was actually very small. We just did ourselves a favor and used modern JavaScript to prevent having to chain promises together or nest callbacks and things like that.
And kind of broke it out just to make it a little easier
bit.
to read. Yep.
Hopefully. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this, and I'm actually going to push it up to GitHub right now.
All right.
So that way it's available. So that way you can play around with it yourself. I am going to remove my tokens though first.
Yep. So in chat right now, there's a link to the GitHub page where you can go and download this episode's text to kind of just poke around and mess around, change the location, and search for your own stuff if you didn't like looking for Starbucks. So that's up right now. This episode, I'll download it today, and I'll try to get it up by Friday, hopefully up on YouTube, and we'll have a link there. It's just I don't know if I have a link to our at least I'll put past episodes up. So where those episodes exist on YouTube, that's where this episode 3 will come.
So it's already pushed.
Wow, look at you.
So we're good.
So that's episode 3. Nic, good job.
Thanks. Sorry. I mean, it's a lot to take in, right?
What are you sorry about? Too much information. Come on.
I mean, maybe we can use this as feedback, because should we have separated this into 3 smaller episodes? Maybe I'll let the listeners decide that. So that way we can kind of better model season 2, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think, I mean, the length of time I don't think we're kind of right at time right now. So that's.
But maybe I could have spent more time on each individual rather than cramming them together real fast.
Yeah. So what else? Yeah. So underneath at the bottom of our Twitch page, actually, you can scroll down and there's a suggestions box. So if there's something like that you want to say, I wish you spent more time on reverse geocoder or places to give us more information about, you can put that there. If you can say maybe your next season should be just on geocoder or whatever, go ahead and throw that in there, and we can look at that and take suggestions, because we're planning out our next season of Waypoints right now. So you can have an impact of what we look at next, because we're doing this all for you. Yeah. So Palermo says, great show. He said he said I like how you did this. Dr. Zero says either way is fine. But,
either way, as in what?
Diving in further or splitting it up. So
got it.
I mean, we can always have more content coming out that focuses on different pieces.
Sure.
Yes. So next episode, Jathan, what are we doing next episode, Nic?
Yeah. So next episode, we're going to be focusing on routing. And we're going to be exploring 2 different kinds. So we're going to do standard waypoint routing. So calculating the fastest path between 2 points that are actually traversable, not just straight lines. So like taking the highway from Fresno to San Francisco or something like that, and figuring out the path and drawing it. And then we're going to be looking at isoline graphs, which would be a little different, which would be given a center point, how far could you get to a certain region given different criteria, kind of thing.
Oh, so we're doing isolines and routing on the same.
Yeah, because they're both under the routing category.
Cool.
So it makes sense to do them together.
Yep. Oh, Dr. Zero clarified either way, shorter or longer
Oh,
sessions.
got it.
Yeah. So I think we might stick to an hour for next season. If there's more demand for longer content, I think it makes it a little hard to stick around for 2 hours of a tutorial at one
Sure.
time. But what else we got? So the next episode of Waypoints, our last episode of season 1, is April 10th. Same time, same place. Sorry if it was a little confusing. I didn't mention that we've kind of changed our name. We just removed an S. So we're twitch.tv/heredev. So you can catch, actually, let me throw it up on screen so we can have a calendar and look at it. Yes. So episode 4 of Waypoints is April 10th. And you can see actually on Monday, the 8th of April, we have a special XYZ stream. So kind of diving into some future features and we're going to have Jason and I are going to explore a little bit of XYZ on the 8th of April. We'll have more information on that later. You probably look for that in the first week of April. We'll have more of a defined. We'll probably have like a little promo video that comes out beforehand.
That's before the next episode of Waypoints?
Yeah. Yep.
Got it.
And what else we got here? Everybody in chat is clapping for us, by the way.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so let me throw in Waypoints. Yeah. So if you click on that Waypoint link, it takes you to, I've been kind of using it for our Twitch channel as Twitch has this events system that if you go to the full events list, I have all of the episodes set up as an event itself. And if you click follow, the little heart on the series itself, then you'll be notified for each episode. And you can also just follow our Twitch account to get notified every time that we're live. So if you want to subscribe for a specific season or just every time that we're live and you would just want to come and participate for each time. Yes. So make sure you follow and then ring that bell for notifications. Nick, do you have anything else you want to share? You want to talk about?
No, not for this particular episode. I mean, we're always looking for feedback. So definitely, if you've got suggestions, drop them in the box after the show.
Yep. And I with the bot, I can also initiate polls. So if we get to a point in our next episode that maybe we could have done a poll for what we're going to search for through places. Nick, we could have done that. I'm sorry. I blew it. Let's see what else. Bierzo app is asking for a round of rock scissors paper.
What?
I'm kind of the rock paper scissors champ, so Nick, I don't know if you want to lose it.
I don't know if I want to embarrass myself.
No? Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out and watching. We'll see you on episode 4. And if you want to check out the XYZ stream on the 8th, I'll see you on the 8th. That's it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.